Hi, welcome to the Craft Channel. My name's Corinne Brad, and I've got a project today that originally I was a bit sceptical about, and actually now I love it, and it's beeswax wraps. I know a lot of you have already converted to this from cling film. You know when you just think, well, how can it work? It does. Now, even under these hot lights, this piece of cheese, all right, it's not secure, you know, it is flapping about, but it's holding this piece of brie, which I will be eating for my lunch later, really well in a beeswax wrap. The other thing I've found with cheese is it doesn't go mouldy anymore, whereas my cheese in the fridge used to get a bit sweaty and horrible. The flavour doesn't transfer. It's great for covering bowls. You're not going to put bolognese in there and tip it upside down, but if you've got some, I don't know, leftover pasta salad or something like that, a beeswax wrap does the job of cling film just as well, and they're very, very simple to make. All you need is some cotton fabric and some organic beeswax. With it being organic, it will be food grade, so there's no nasty chemicals in there. And if you are as old as me and you can go back to about the sort of, late 80s, early 90s, when encaustic art was quite a thing, that was painting with beeswax, coloured beeswax, you might still have an old iron which doesn't have any steam holes in it. If you're lucky enough to have an old iron that doesn't have any steam holes in it, you can grab yourself a beeswax candle or a block of beeswax that you can buy quite easily online or at your local cosmetic store, organic store. These are, as I say, food safe. I know they're organic because I've made them myself. And actually they are about 75% beeswax and 25% coconut oil, which means that they've got a slightly lower melting temperature, but it means you've got a slightly suppler beeswax wrap. And all I'm going to do is, this iron is set on about wool, I'm just going to paint my candle over the surface of my iron onto a baking tray and let the wax drip over the fabric, like so, and then just iron it on. And the good thing about this method is you can see where your fabric becomes darker, where you've actually got the beeswax, and you work it on a baking tray like this, you don't get any waste. Because the tray cannot absorb the beeswax, it can only go onto your fabric. And what you can do is you can just lift your fabric and the heat will transfer it into the grain. Now, you can't do this method, or you can't sensibly do this method, if you've got an iron with steam holes in it. Because it doesn't matter how careful you are, you will eventually end up clogging those steam holes up with wax. And it's all right while the iron's hot, but then if you forget what you've done and try and iron your favourite shirt, you'll end up with wax all over it. And wax is notoriously difficult to get out of clothes, which is why it's so good as a beeswax wrap, because you can scrub these in a bit of warm water with a little bit of detergent. You know, if you've got food stains on them, you can scrub them and the wax stays there. So if you don't have an iron that's completely flat like this, and you have a neat little iron, just pop him over there, that's got the steam holes in the top of it, you can make wax wraps almost in the same way, but you lay your fabric on your baking tray, you get some beeswax pellets like these, and just scatter them over the top. Or if you haven't got pellets, you can chop up a candle. Beeswax is very hard in its natural state. It's one of those things, if you are making candles with it, you need to leave it to melt for a very long time. And then just get some greaseproof paper. This is baking parchment, greaseproof paper to the rest of us. Lay it over the top of your wax pellets, and then just melt the wax through the paper. Now, I haven't got any water in this steam iron, and I don't actually think I've got this up high enough to melt. There you go, let's turn him up a little bit. This is quite a neat little iron actually from Prim, that's ideal for, if you're a sewer, pressing seams out as you're going. But I like tools that have more than one purpose. So melting beeswax to make wraps is perfect. And just iron it through here. And as you can see, it's melting into the cloth. And you can do this with a minimum of wax pellets, you know, rather than keep putting loads and loads more wax on the top because you've seen a bald spot. Lift it up, and then where you can see that there is still wax on your baking tray, put the bald spot of your fabric on the puddle of wax, so there's no waste. Let's just put a tiny few more here. Oh, there's one on the floor. I mean, other methods, if you don't fancy ironing it, people do suggest that you sort of lay a tray of beeswax pellets in the oven, let it melt, and then dip your cloth in it. I think that you get too thick a layer, to be honest with you. I think it's quite wasteful. Oh, that's just stuck to the table because it's still hot. With an iron, what you can do is you can make sure that the layer of beeswax that you've got on your cloth is even, because you're ironing it and pushing the wax out. So it makes a much suppler wrap. And it's one of those things, you know, people have sort of said, oh, they crack and, you know, they're really stiff. This is warm still because it's just been ironed, but it is very flexible. I'm just going to leave it there because I'm just going to show you one that's... Again, you've still got flexibility to it. You can still wrap things up in it. Like this. You know, you could use this kind of fabric to line reusable lunch bags, things like that. And it's almost got like a buttery feel to it. But you can rub your hands on it and nothing comes off on your hands. If anything, especially if you put a bit of coconut oil in your beeswax, it makes a really nice feel to your hands. Keeps them nice and soft. Cut them in circles and use pinking shears so that your fabric doesn't fray, so that you can just pop it over a bowl. Or wrap your cheese up with it. I'm converted. It's one of those things. I was using foil instead of cling film. I was using elasticated bowl covers instead of cling film. I'm now using beeswax wraps. I'm making my father use beeswax wraps. I'm having a beeswax wrap party because they are really good. And it's one of those things that you think, you know, all right, people did use waxed paper years ago to wrap things up. One thing I would say, I wouldn't wrap raw meat in it because I don't think you can get them clean enough. And I wouldn't want anybody to get food poisoning because they'd wrapped up a chicken breast in a beeswax wrap. But for things like bread, cheese, vegetables, covering bowls, they are absolutely perfect. And they just last forever and ever. And at some point, if you feel that they aren't that great anymore, just put them back on your baking tray, give them a bit of an iron over with a bit more beeswax, and they're as good as new. So I hope you like that. I hope that's inspired you to chuck away the cling film, ditch the disposable, and get yourself some beeswax wraps. Thanks for watching. Bye. If you've been inspired to create, please share your makes with us in the comments section below. And if you've enjoyed videos by the Crafts channel, hit the like button. Want to see more of us? Then click subscribe. See you next time.